Let me see. Hello, everybody. My name is Attorney C.D. Queen Haile Esquire. I am a licensed Louisiana attorney and I focus on business formation, intellectual property, such as trademarks and copyrights. And I have a passion for assisting cannapreneur in this industry. So I am so honored and thankful to be here to share my presentation with you all. And the title of the presentation is Cannabis Businesses and Brands, a Solid Legal Foundation. So we are getting ready to start the presentation. Share my screen. So here we are, Cannabis Businesses and Brands, a Solid Legal Foundation. This presentation is started by Belter Law Firm, which is a law firm for entrepreneurs, specifically in the cannabis industry. And the veiled lawyer is who I am for obvious reasons, of course, but as we progress in the presentation, you will all actually see the legal reasons for veils, because veils are very, very important in the legal world and for your business and brand. And so here on the left, my favorite quote in the entire world, the whole world opened up to me when I learned how to read. This is by Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. She is my shero. And education, that is all I am about. And she learned about her when I was younger. She just opened the world up to me, and education saved my life. So Belle Terre is actually Louisiana French for beautiful earth. And when justice is served, the earth is beautiful. And this is myself, C.D. Queen Haile Esquire, founder and owner of Belle Terre Law Firm, also known as the Veiled Lawyer. So this is my history. This is how I got into the cannabis industry. This picture is the fathers of Belle Terre Law Firm, the infamous Haile men, Louisiana kingpins. I am a fourth generation cannapreneur in the cannabis industry. Here is my grandpa, Johnson Haile, peace be upon him. He has passed away. In the middle is my dad. He's still alive. And on the end is my great grandpa, Richard Haile, peace be upon him as well. He has passed away. They were all in the plant medicine industry. And the kind of different thing about me is that I am actually the second generation on my paternal side who was not born on a plantation. My dad was the first who was not born on a plantation. I actually still go back to the plantation that my ancestors was on, like maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And it is still like, it's a museum now, but it's still there. So my family, they actually grew cannabis on the plantation. And they also use cannabis as a means to leave the plantation. And their lineage actually goes back to Spain. So my great grandpa, he was a Spaniard. And if people don't know, Spain is like the epicenter of cannabis in Europe. That's where all like the best hashish comes through. So I am very, very connected to the cannabis industry. So my ancestors and my forefathers, they're like just so proud of me. And I'm just proud that I come from that lineage, despite being made to be ashamed that my family was in the plant medicine industry, that they consumed cannabis, that they sold cannabis. And look at them, they look like some kingpins because they were. And yes, I was justice impacted because my grandpa and my dad, they did do time in Louisiana Department of Corrections. So I grew up in and out of multiple prisons in Louisiana, visiting multiple family members. So when people say the phrase, they're not new to this, they true to that, like that applies to me. So I am a proud fourth generation cannapreneur. Just so happened I'm on the legal side now. So today we're going to talk about marijuana versus hemp, plant touching versus ancillary business, business formation, contracts, branding, banking, license fees, conclusions, and questions. Marijuana versus hemp. Marijuana contains more than 0.3% THC, is federally illegal. It has stricter rules and regulations, extremely high taxes, high instances of raids and robberies, extremely high banking and financial tech platform fees, high chance of product loss, higher overhead costs. License fees range between 4 to 6 figures, but some jurisdictions do have social equity programs. Industrial hemp contains less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC, is federally legal. The rules and regulations are not as strict as marijuana, but there are rules and regulations that must be followed and abided by in the industrial hemp industry that a lot of people aren't adhering to, and we'll get to that later. The taxes are easier to afford, lower instances of robberies and raids, it's easier to obtain a bank account, and lower chance of product loss if you're not a grower. Lower overhead costs, licensing fees are 3 figures, and some states actually allow industrial hemp that has a psychoactive effect. Marijuana versus hemp. So the thing about marijuana is because it's federally illegal, you are not allowed to transport it interstate. You're not allowed to do that interstate, which means between multiple states or even between 2 states. So marijuana is only able to be transported intrastate. So that means if you have a multi-state operation and you have a license in California and you have a license in Oregon and you're growing in both of those states, you cannot take that product from Oregon and ship it down to California or vice versa. So the product that's grown in Oregon has to only be transported throughout the state of Oregon, and the product that's grown in California shall only be transported throughout the state of California. With hemp, you do not have to worry about it. You do have interstate commerce. Thankfully, the last state that was on board, that was not on board, was Idaho. There was a time where you could not pass through Idaho with hemp whatsoever, or you were going to get put in jail. The shipment was going to be seized. But now Idaho is on board. But some states, because there are states' rights, some states do require, if you are actually dropping a shipment off in that state, not just transporting it through, that you have what is usually called a transport license or a contract carrier license or a handler's license. So plant touching versus ancillary business. Plant touching businesses, whether it's marijuana or whether it's hemp, growers, processors, dispensaries, because now you're actually dealing hands-on with the actual plant. Ancillary businesses are businesses that are not plant touching businesses. Remember the California Gold Rush? The businesses that made the most money were the businesses selling the jeans, overalls, buckets, pickaxes, shovels, and other things that had absolutely nothing to do with gold. And a great example is the company Levi Jeans. They actually were started throughout that time because they needed that heavy denim and those overalls to go and mine for the gold. And now we're actually seeing that Levi Jeans is starting to implement hemp into their denim products now. So now Levi Jeans is getting in on the green rush too. So some examples of ancillary businesses, and I do want to preface this by saying this. Ancillary businesses, I may be a little bit biased, but they are actually my favorite businesses to consult because you can just do so much more with ancillary businesses, and it's just not a lot of as much red tape as if you're dealing with the actual plant touching businesses. So some examples of ancillary businesses: graphic designing, packaging, transportation, technology, real estate, professional careers, financial, tech platforms, finance, supply chain management, podcasts, specialty events. I mean, y'all, the list just goes on and on and on. Business formation. Okay, so before I hop into the next slide, we have to remember that even though we are in a time now where, depending on what is the THC content of the plant is, we are in a legal industry. Or if it's marijuana, then your respective state is legal there. But we have to remember that this is not a new industry whatsoever. The cannabis industry has been here since they were trade routes. So the trading of cannabis has been here for a long, long time. It has always been an established industry. But some of those things from that industry, some say black market, some say underground, some say legacy, some say self-regulated, but some of those aspects of those prior markets, we kind of need to leave some of those things behind. Not all of that, but some of those aspects. So business formation. This is the worst way to form your business, and this is the most common way that people actually still form their businesses in the cannabis industry, and that's that element from the legacy market, and that is called the gentleman's agreement. We understand people on those markets, they had to do what they had to do because that is just what it was. So gentleman's agreement is an informal business agreement between two or more people with a handshake. There are usually no contracts. There are no delegation of duties. There's usually commingling of funds. Gentlemen's agreements always result in the innocent party being burned badly by the person who approached them with the agreement. So usually it is, they're at a bar, they're at a casino, or they're at some, back alley clandestine event, and they are just talking about they want to pretty much get into the game. And it is a handshake, and there's nothing there except a handshake and an exchange of money. And those of us who know anything about those other markets, we know what comes along with those types of agreements, and it usually involves your physical safety being at risk. So that is one of the elements that I just highly advise, and you got to leave that behind, y'all. We are in a time now where we can do things above ground. We can do them the right way, and we can avoid a lot of those things and a lot of those elements. So a gentleman's agreement is somebody that you grew up with, usually somebody who practices the same faith as you, or just somebody who you know from around the way. They're just going to approach you and say, hey, let's get in on this business, and it usually goes south. Sole proprietorship. This is not a business entity. It is an individual holding themselves out as a business. As a sole proprietor, you have no corporate veil protection. If your business is being sued, you are sued for everything that you have. So there are people who are trying to get into the cannabis industry, and they want to do this sole proprietorship. They want to do all these anonymous LLCs. They want to do this. They want to do that. Y'all, there is no anonymity in the cannabis industry. It does not work like that. And you usually see that those are the businesses that go down, and they go down really, really quickly. Corporations. A lot of people want to have that INC behind their business name to make themselves seem more than what they are. And those are the businesses that usually go down as well, especially for the new and solo cannapreneurs in this industry. Corporations starting out, I highly advise never to form a corporation when you're just starting out, because it's just too many corporate formalities that you have to abide by. And it's just a lot. There's already a lot of risk in entrepreneurship. Then we're in the cannabis industry, so we know the risk that comes along with that as well. And then people want to add all this other stuff on there. It's just not a good idea. So in corporations, shareholders are not typically liable for the debts of the corporation, but the formalities, y'all, is so many formalities. It's complex tax and legal requirements. You have to have a formal board of directors, shareholders meetings, meeting minutes, bylaws, and record keeping, as well as annual state registration. And the management is managed by the board of directors, who are usually elected by the shareholders. You can have officers who run the daily operations, but it's just too much. And so this is usually recommended for people once you really start to hit like the $10 million mark, then you can convert over to a corporation. But if you are not making $10 million annually, a corporation is not what you need to form. LLCs, limited liability companies. Members are not typically liable for the debts of the LLC. Formalities, you can see here, it's not as many formalities as a corporation. So formal meetings and minutes are not required. However, annual state registration is required. Management is flexible, and typically an operating agreement outlines management duties. By default, there's no tax at the entity level. Income and losses are passed through to the members' individual tax returns. LLCs may also elect to be taxed as a C or S corporation. Definitely discuss that with your tax attorney or your CPA or your licensed tax professional. And this is the best recommendation for solo and new entrepreneurs starting in the cannabis industry, because you get strong liability protection with minimal corporate formalities and also the simplicity of pass-through taxation. Corporate veils. So yes, businesses wear face veils too, y'all. A corporate veil is a shield between the business and the business owners that protects the owners from being personally liable for any debts or liabilities that business may occur. So in the legal world, we have a term actually called piercing the corporate veil. So that means if your corporate veil is pierced, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you're not following those corporate formalities, they can come after everything. So in order to remain protected by your corporate veil, the business owner must follow and maintain the corporate formalities that they are required by the business entity that they choose. So that's why I do not recommend corporations, because 11 times out of 10, when people are forming those corporations and they aren't making $10 million annually for their business, they don't have no corporate veil protection, y'all, because they're not following and maintaining those corporate formalities. So they are pretty much thinking that they are protected, but they're essentially operating in their personal capacity, which is never a good idea. And how to maintain the corporate veil of an LLC: file annual registration, keep your business contracts, assets, and liabilities in the business name, file the operating agreement if there is one, and never, ever, ever commingle funds. This is actually the biggest way to pierce your corporate veil for LLC, despite the minimal corporate formalities, because people, they don't have a separate business bank account. Or if they do have a separate business bank account, they are using that business bank account for personal matters. And that is a way to pierce the corporate veil and hold you personally liable. Frequently needed contracts. Why contracts are important for entrepreneurs, but especially in the cannabis industry, y'all. So we know that we are held under a higher scrutiny in the cannabis industry. It just what comes along with it. It is what it is, but I'm here to help you all navigate those things. So contracts help to set expectations between the parties, helps to eliminate misunderstandings and reduce risk, clearly outlines what the parties agreed to, establishes how disputes will be handled, helps to protect all that they're investing in their business, clarifies that the liability is that of the business and not personal to the owner. Frequently needed contracts for entrepreneurs. Remember, I talked about that gentleman's agreement and how those people usually approach you, especially in the cannabis industry. And I have to say this, I have to be frank. Some people still consider this the dope game, and they still see certain people who are eager to enter into this industry. Even though those people are eager to enter into the industry in good faith, there's still that element who view this as the dope game, and they view a lot of people as sitting ducks. So they are usually going to approach you with a gentleman's agreement. And so anytime you are discussing business ideas with any potential investor, any potential business partner, anybody, the first thing that you want to do is have a non-disclosure agreement. A non-disclosure agreement actually helps to protect your ideas under contract. And you can actually have a non-compete, non-circumvent, things like that in the non-disclosure agreement. So that way you won't be backdoored. If you have an idea that is just amazing, it's just an idea, but it's an amazing idea, but you don't have the capital, and this person actually has the money to do it. If you're not discussing anything under a non-disclosure agreement, you're just giving away everything for free. And because they already have the money, what they're going to do is they're going to sit and talk with you. They're going to take you to lunch. They're going to wine and dine you. You're going to be feeling all good. And you are going to be stuck like Chuck once you look up and realize that they opened this exact same business that you were talking about with the same name, the same, all of this type of stuff. So you can do a non-disclosure agreement, and that will help to protect you. A copyright assignment agreement. What a copyright assignment agreement does, that actually helps to protect any of your creative works of art. Operating agreement. Operating agreement is like a prenup in a marriage. So now we formed our business. This is like a marriage, y'all. Anytime you're entering into business, your operating agreement is like your prenup. It's going to help you flesh out all the roles, responsibilities, and details, the percentages of ownership, all of that for everybody who is actually on that LLC. So everybody who is actually a member or a manager, it is the operating agreement is like y'all prenup. Client services agreement. This is a contract that fleshes out the terms and conditions in order to work with you in your business. Website privacy policy and terms and conditions. We have to remember this is cannabis, even if you're dealing with hemp. So there are age restrictions. I know with hemp, you can do 18, but most of the website privacy policy terms and conditions that I do, I just recommend for it to be 21 of age and older. And so that is going to put people on notice of all the information that you're collecting from your website, because we know we have to do all this age verification. We have to make sure people are who they say that they are before they're buying stuff from us online. We have to make sure that they are of age. Independent contractor agreement, standard operating procedures, management services agreement, financial sources agreement. Financial sources agreement, especially if you are in the marijuana industry, a lot of jurisdictions do require this as of before you apply for licenses, because they want to know where the money is coming from. You know, remember I told you there is pretty much no anonymity here in the cannabis industry. So they want to know where is this money coming from and who is giving this money to pretty much front this business. Investor agreements, very, very, very common in the cannabis industry. And I would be remiss if I don't briefly talk about investors really quick. So you have, which is like, it's called a private investor, but it's not really technically an investor. It is basically somebody you know that's giving you money. So if you're asking your grandmother or your aunt, you know, hey aunt, hey mama, you know, I need between $5,000 to $10,000 to help, you know, fund my business. They are what is considered a private investor, and that will actually fall under the profit share agreement. So when you're getting into investors, you have which is called an angel investor and a venture capitalist. Angel investors, before they invest in you, Usually they want to see that, depending on which type of angel investor they are, they want to see that you are making between 100,000 annually or up to 10 million annually before they invest in you. And venture capitalists, they want to see that you're making at least, $10 million or almost at the $10 million mark. And that's the minimum for them to even take you serious. So anytime you thinking that you're dealing with an investor, always keep that in mind, because it's likely that you're dealing with what is called a private investor, and that will fall under a profit share agreement. So what a profit share agreement is, because usually investors, they want a stake in ownership in your business. With profit share, it's not like that. With profit share, they give you money and then they want a percentage of your profits, but they have no ownership in your business or your brand. When you're dealing with those real investors, that's when you're going to start getting into that. So a lot of people are under the false assumption that they're dealing with an actual investor, and that's just not the case. Age verification technology for your website. A lot of these states want to verify and make sure that you are checking the ages of people, rightfully so, who are purchasing your product. And you also have to have secure servers to store that information in case they want to do an audit. Branding, copyrights, and trademarks. So before we get into branding, we have to keep in mind that we are all dealing with the same product, and that is cannabis. Even if you're not plant touching, it all goes back to cannabis. And so what branding does, especially with trademarks, it distinguishes the source of the goods or the services. So we all know that the good and the service is cannabis related. So we all dealing with the same good and services here. And it is that branding that is going to set apart that source. Copyright laws. Under United States federal copyright law, whoever creates it owns it. Examples of content that may be protected by copyright, and these are some good ideas for my ancillary business people out here. Music, lyrics, graphics, sculptures, choreography, literature, video, photos, books, ebooks, website content, podcast recordings, logos, speeches, presentations, webinars. Copyright assignment agreement. A written agreement signed by the creator of the copyrighted work with a clear intention to transfer ownership and the exclusive rights from the creator to a third party. This is so important because this is how people usually get got, and they usually get game ran on them, because especially when it comes to the graphics, like the logos, when they're starting to really build their brand, they are going to these graphic designers, they're going to these people, they're purchasing logos, and they're under the false assumption that just because the money exchanged hand and that they paid money for this logo, even though they didn't sign a copyright assignment agreement, that they own this logo. And that is not the case. Essentially, that means that you are licensing your own creative work of art, because under United States federal law, whoever creates it owns it, and that graphic designer was the one who created it, and they never transferred ownership to you under a copyright assignment agreement. So once your business starts coming up, once you're on all these billboards, once you start bringing in those millions and having these angel investors and venture capitalists looking at you, looking at your brand, that person's gonna say, wait, hold up, that belongs to me. So either you give me X amount of dollars, which is usually going to be like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, for you to actually continue to use this, or you don't use this anymore, and then you have to rebrand. And in the cannabis industry, regardless of whether you're on this side or the other markets, we all know that your reputation is everything in the cannabis industry. So once that goes down the toilet, it goes down the toilet. And so once you have to rebrand and do all of that, your reputation has gone out the window with that. So a copyright assignment agreement actually protects you. So before you even exchange money for somebody, especially with the logos, before you even exchange money for their logo, you want to execute a copyright assignment agreement. Trademarks. Yes, you can actually trademark your cannabis brand. There are exceptions, of course. So a trademark is a word, phrase, symbol, and or design, also known as a mark, that identifies and distinguishes the source of the goods of one party from those of others. A trademark is used in connection with the sale or promotion of a product or service. Examples of content that may be trademarked: business name, business logo, t-shirt brand, signature event title, stage name, blog, podcast title, app names, slogans, taglines, catchphrases, titles of book series, product name, nonprofit name, and program title. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this, y'all already know of an established company out here who fits this bill in the cannabis industry from one of these items that are listed here. Examples of content that may not be protected by a trademark: ideas. Remember, only ideas can only be protected by a non-disclosure agreement. Concepts, methods, systems, inventions. That's when you start getting into patents. Names of songs, names of single creative work, t-shirt designs, ornamental designs, generic words and phrases, widely used messages. Benefits of registered trademarks: protects against federal registration of not only identical marks, but also confusingly similar marks. So we all know the big brand name cookies. They are a trademark. So nobody can come up here, and we know what a cookie is. That's a real dessert. So nobody can come up here and start a cannabis business and name it Brookies. A Brookie is a real dessert too. That's a brownie and a cookie mixed together. So nobody is going to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to, start Brookies, and that's going to be a cannabis business, and I'm going to get a registered trademark for that. No, Mr. Bernard and his team is going to come after you, rightfully so, and they should. Other benefits of registered trademarks: provides nationwide notice of ownership of the mark, also protected throughout the entire United States and its territories and possessions, and also grants the right to use the registration symbol, which is the R in the circle that a lot of people are out here using, and they don't have no type of trademark, is not registered in anybody's trademark office, but they are out here using this symbol, and they are 100% wrong. More benefits: serves as evidence of the valid and exclusive ownership of the mark, discourages others from using confusingly similar marks, stops trademark infringing imports at the U.S. border, prevents good faith defense, stronger cease and desist letters. More benefits: registered trademarks last forever as long as you file the required maintenance documents. You can also pass your trademarks down to your descendants. We hear a lot of people throwing around generational wealth, that phrase, in the cannabis industry, but they're not really putting a lot of substance behind it and really telling people how you can generate generational wealth in the cannabis industry. And that is actually through a trademark. Just like Sam Walton and his family, that is trademark. And so he is, his descendants now, they're licensing those Walmart trademarks out to a lot of people, and they are creating multiple streams of income. And we know that because they are quadrillionaires. They're past billion by now, but that was through trademarks. And that is the importance of registered United States federal trademarks. You can also, like I stated earlier, you can also license your trademarks to other businesses for additional streams of income. And this is really important too, because when you license your trademarks to other businesses for additional streams of income, you want to really vet who you are licensing your trademark to, because like we just saw with the recent Sesame Street fiasco and those theme parks, that wasn't actually Sesame Workshop who did that. Sesame Workshop, that was started in the late 60s and the 70s, they licensed their trademark. And so a lot of people were creating dolls, kids' furniture, books, all of this stuff off licenses that they purchased from Sesame Workshop. And this theme park, they purchased a license from Sesame Workshop, and they did Sesame Place theme park, but their actions ruined, Sesame Street Workshop's brand. And Sesame Street Workshop, they had to do a lot of damage control simply because of somebody who they licensed their trademark to. So you always want to really, really vet who you are licensing your trademark to, because yes, it is a multiple stream of income, but if it's a situation like we've seen what happened with Sesame Street, it can also take your original brand down, and you will have to do a lot of damage control and regrouping. Frequently asked questions about trademarks. When is the right time to trademark my brand and logo? Do I need an LLC first? Can I still trademark my business and logo even if I am not using them yet? The right time to trademark is as soon as you start your business. Yes, an LLC or other business entity is always best to have before filing a trademark application. Although it is actually suggested to do a trademark search before starting your LLC. And this is important because a lot of people are under the false assumption that the Secretary of State in whatever state that they're forming their LLC has some type of communication with the trademark office. That is not the case. They don't communicate at all. So just because a name has been cleared in your Secretary of State office does not mean that there's somebody in another state using that name. And that definitely does not mean that somebody has not already trademarked that name in the United States Trademark Office. So that's why it is always best to do a trademark search for your suggested names or the names that you want to use for your business and brand before you start your LLC. Even if you are not using your trademark, you can apply for what is called a 1B or an intent to use application. And this actually protects your business before you launch. And it actually gives you time to get your business together before you start to officially launch. And the good thing is once your intent to use application is in, that if somebody else tries to come back and file for the same or something confusingly similar, then the trademark office is going to reject it. State trademarks, also known as common law trademarks. So in any other business world, a state trademark is virtually worthless, y'all. But we're different because we're in the cannabis industry. So we just got to be different. But here, that different is good. So a common law trademark is established in a geographic area where the mark is used in commerce, but the mark is not federally registered. It endures with continual deliberate use and is shown by the superscript symbol TM. And why state trademarks are important in the cannabis industry, especially with marijuana, is because we have to remember, y'all, it's federally illegal. It's federally illegal. So that means we can't, for the actual plant in and of itself, we can't get a trademark for that good and that product. But because it's legal in Colorado, but because it's legal in California, but because it's legal in all these other states, you can actually apply for a state trademark for that actual plant, for the actual marijuana plant, for that good and that service, because it's legal. And if you're a multi-state operator, you can do that in other states and you will have that protection. So usually how it goes is they get the state trademarks for the actual plant product, and then they get the federal trademark for the ancillary goods and services, because we know that most people in the cannabis industry, they have some form of ancillary business in addition to the actual plant that they have. So they're getting the state trademarks for the plant. So nobody else could come in Cali, nobody else could come in Colorado and have a state trademark or use that mark for the actual flower or the extract or the isolate or any other type form of the cannabis. So they're protected on that side and they're protected on the federal side. And once it becomes federally legal, it'll just be easier for them to transition to a federal trademark. And once again, we have to remember that in the cannabis industry, your reputation is everything. So you want to protect your brand because nobody wants to be known. If you're a plant touching business, nobody wants to be known as the business who sells moldy weed. Nobody wants to be known as the business who are shorting people. You're saying you're giving people this amount, but it's really not. And once that's connected to your brand, it's pretty much a wrap. Or you don't want to be the people who are just not really good in the cannabis industry, because those are the businesses that we see go down really fast. CBD trademarks. A product containing CBD derived from hemp, it has to be derived from hemp, can achieve a federal trademark registration as long as the product is not meant to be eaten, claims no medicinal benefit, and the THC content is less than 0.3%. Skincare products and cosmetics meet this test. Banking and licensing fees have to save the best for last. So yes, y'all, it costs money to enter this industry. Regardless of what side you're on, it costs money. But like I stated earlier, on the other side, depending on who's fronting you what, it can cost you your freedom, safety, and your life as well. MRB, a MRB is a marijuana related business. Those licensing fees. Most of those licensing fees are actually 5 figures, and this is just for the license application fees. And they often require you to pretty much have the business up and running before even applying for the license. So that's why you start getting to those high dollar amounts with these MRBs, because they want you to pretty much have it set up before you even pay the 5 figures for the license. So overhead for brick and mortar MRBs are extremely high. There is no guarantee that your application will be approved. Most fees are actually non-refundable. And all in all, including the license fees, MRB fees end up falling between the higher end of 6 figures and lower end of 7 figures. This is actually just to get the business started, not to have the business running, just to get the business started. Hemp licensing fees are extremely affordable. They range from 3 figures to the lower end of 4 figures. I know here in Louisiana, they range between $175 to $500. License application fees often require you to have the business practically up and running before even applying for the license. Overhead brick and mortar hemp businesses are more cost effective, so they're not as expensive as the MRBs. And there are also more opportunities for online businesses to greatly decrease overhead costs. State chartered banks. So due to marijuana being federally legal, banks do not have to give you a bank account. It is always up to the bank's discretion. So in states where marijuana is legal, your best chance at opening a bank account is with a state chartered bank or credit union. This option is best for industrial hemp as well. And the best way to find a state chartered bank is literally, this is the only time I advise to use Google to find a bank, is to type in your state's name. So I will type Louisiana State Charters Bank and make sure it brings you to the official state government website. And it's going to populate a list of all the state charter banks. And you really just have to go through and call. And be honest, y'all. If you're dealing with marijuana, tell the people that you have a marijuana related business, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself in a lot of hot water, triggering a lot of federal charges, trafficking, RICO, money laundering, all of this. Just be honest. And all they can do is tell you yay or nay. You want to be honest in the beginning so you don't get caught up on the back end and have to fight all these charges. Marijuana related businesses are under the most scrutiny with banks. Those fees are a lot of money, y'all. Thousands of dollars. And that's after encountering all the obstacles that come with opening a bank account for marijuana related businesses. Industrial hemp banking fees. And hemp is federally legal, but it's still not easy to open a bank account. Banks often want to make sure that you're only selling hemp. Some banks tack on extra monthly fees and some do not. It just depends on the bank, seriously. And most banks do require notarized documents to be submitted to verify that you are only selling hemp products. I know here in the South, They're getting on board. But they still kind of look at you with the eye like, are you sure it's just some hemp that you're trying to sell and open this business bank account for? And they will question you, and they will have you filling out all of these documents to make sure, because you don't want to trigger a suspicious activity report, because that's when the feds come in, and nobody want to do no Fed time. Financial tech platform fees. Using these payment processing systems run major risk as well. These platforms can freeze and even seize your money in their systems, even with CBD. The few systems that allow you to utilize their systems have extremely high fees as well. I actually just got off a call earlier this morning, and Square was holding up somebody for some CBD. So, I definitely have to help them get that resolved. But it's just some CBD, and Square is giving them the EY to make sure that it's only CBD. Thank y'all so much for joining me for Cannabis Businesses and Brands, a solid legal foundation. My name is Queen Haile. I am a fourth generation, a proud fourth generation cannapreneur and licensed Louisiana attorney. And I am just so honored to be here, y'all. I'm just gonna talk regular, to share the game with y'all. Okay, I'm sharing the game with y'all. Some people may know how the street code go. Thankfully, I know the street code, but I know the legal code as well. And so it is just an honor for me to be able to share that legal code with folks so they won't get caught up, so they can enter this industry, because we know that a lot of Black folks are being red taped out of this industry for obvious reasons, even though traditionally we have always been in this industry. Even from my bloodline, even from majority of the people who's probably watching this, and for those who are actually new, generations from now, your descendants will be able to say, wow, my ancestor, they got in on the ground, they got in on the green rush, and we are still benefiting off of this. Our lives are great. We have created heaven on earth for ourselves by being in the cannabis industry. So I am here to help you avoid hell on earth that can come along with the cannabis industry when you don't know those complex rules and regulations, because it's written by design, y'all. It's written to be confusing, and it's done in a way to get you caught up. And so that's why I'm here, and that's why I do what I do, and I love what I do, and I love the cannabis plant. Cannabis literally saved my life. Cannabis law, literally learning about cannabis law saved my life when I was in law school. And I'm just so thankful and so grateful to be able to share this knowledge and share this game with y'all. Thank y'all so much.